So today's video is going to have a little bit of a different format than my videos typically do. So normally on my channel, I do a lot of informative videos and I make up a script beforehand so I kind of know what I'm talking about. But one thing that I've thought that my channel has been kind of lacking a little bit is just some more about me personally. And I think if I can share a little bit more of my story and the things that I struggle with, it'll give kind of a little bit more credibility to the advice that I give and the things that I talk about on this channel, and maybe they can also help somebody like me who, is struggling and isn't really sure how to talk about it or where to start. So before I get into everything, just a quick content warning for this video. I'm going to be talking about suicide. I am not going to be mentioning any specific methods though. I'm going to be sharing the story of my most recent hospitalization, which was earlier this year, and I was hospitalized due to a planned suicide attempt. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about it, but I won't be saying any specific methods or anything like that that could be triggering. So yeah, I guess I will just get into it now. So I've been hospitalized a total of 4 times, 2 in 2021 and 2 in 2022. I have struggled with chronic suicidal thoughts, which is something that I have talked about on this channel before. I've been struggling with these thoughts since I was 11 and I'm 26 now, so that's about 15 years of struggling with suicidal thoughts. I saw therapists on and off earlier, but I didn't really find a therapist that I connected with and a therapist that I felt safe enough to share about my suicidal thoughts until I started seeing my therapist, who is my current therapist, and I started with him in February of 2021. So my most recent hospitalization happened in April of 2022, so earlier this year, and it was just about 3 months after my other hospitalization that was also in the earlier part of 2022. So yeah, I guess I'm just going to start by telling more about that story. So it was a Friday when all of this happened, and I can kind of tell when things are getting worse in terms of my suicidal thoughts. It's a little bit difficult for me just because they are chronic, so I have them all the time. So sometimes it can be hard to assess, like, okay, when are these active thoughts that I need to go to the hospital, or when are these passive thoughts that really suck to have, but they're not any immediate threat to my life. And so sometimes I can have a hard time assessing that. A couple of the things that I do look out for that I noticed before this particular Friday that I ended up being hospitalized are things like my sleep. Typically, when my suicidal thoughts get worse and become more active, I have a much harder time sleeping, and also eating. I have a really hard time eating as my suicidal thoughts get worse. So these are kind of 2 little warning signs that I look for in myself when I'm thinking that I might be getting more depressed and I might be, starting to move from passive suicidal ideation into more active suicidal ideation. The obvious one that I also look for is if I have a plan. This one is a little bit more tricky because sometimes, like in some of my hospitalizations in 2021, I had a very clear plan and a very clear date set. So it was like a little bit easier for me to know, like, okay, well, I have this date set, so like I can plan to go to the hospital, before that date, stay till after the date, and then kind of go from there. This particular time in April that I'm going to be focusing on mostly, I didn't have a plan. I was starting to see those warning signs in myself. I was starting to not sleep. I was starting to have a really hard time eating. I was having a really hard time just doing anything, withdrawing from friends. I wasn't really talking to anyone. I wasn't doing things that I like. I have a dog who you sometimes see in the background of my videos, and like I wasn't taking him on walks. I wasn't doing anything with him, and I just I didn't want to. I just didn't want to do it. But I didn't have a date and I didn't have a very specific plan. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm still fine. So I went into my therapy appointment Friday. I don't remember the exact date, but it was a Friday in April. And typically, as things get worse, my therapist will, at some point during the session, just kind of ask like where I'm at. Like, he'll ask me like, do you think you can keep yourself safe over the weekend? Can you keep yourself safe till our next appointment? So I see him 6 days a week. So I went in on a Friday, and I think this was actually before I added the Saturday appointments. So I saw him I was only seeing him 5 days a week, so I saw him Friday. So his question to me at the end of the appointment was, can you keep yourself safe over the weekend? And will I see you on Monday? I said yes. And at the time, I felt like that was the right answer. I said yes, and I felt like I was telling the truth. I didn't like say yes and then I had some secret plan to kill myself over the weekend. It wasn't anything like that. I just was like, things are really hard right now and I'm feeling really suicidal, but like, I think I can get through this weekend. We can reassess on Monday and kind of go from there. And that was fine. So I left the office and I headed out to my car. And that's kind of where things started to get worse for me. So I got into my car to drive myself home, and I had my dog with me. It was like a nice day, so like I had my dog in the back seat. He just, slept in the back while I had my appointment, and then I came out. He was still sleeping in the car, and I was going to drive him home. So the reason I do that is because sometimes my suicidal thoughts get really bad when I'm driving. So I've kind of put those things in place that like if I have my dog in the car, and obviously if the weather is nice enough that I can keep him in the car during my appointments and he'll be fine, like it's really helpful for me to have him in the car because then I know that I have to drive myself home safely because I have to get my dog home safely. So I had him in the back seat of the car, and I got in and he was just kind of chilling. And I was like, I feel really weird and I think I might have a panic attack. And I was thinking that, and I was like, I probably shouldn't start my car and start to drive because I'm starting to feel like a little bit dizzy. Sometimes my hands get numb when I start to have a panic attack. So I was like, I'm going to sit here for a few minutes and just see if this feeling goes away and I can drive home. Or if I have a panic attack, I'll figure out how to deal with the panic attack and then I'll drive home. And as I was sitting there, things started to like feel worse and worse. And I started to have just like a full blown panic attack. So for me, panic attacks look like, feels like I can't breathe. So like I breathe really fast, really like short, shallow breaths. My face and my hands get really, really numb and I get extremely dizzy and heart rate increases and things like that. So that all started happening and I was kind of in a complete panic. I picked up my phone and I was trying to either call my husband or my therapist, but because my hands were numb and like I couldn't really see because I was so dizzy, like I couldn't really dial anything on my phone. So I put my phone down and that's when I was just like, the suicidal thoughts just like hit me. And it was so weird because it had only been like 15 minutes since my therapy appointment ended and 15 minutes since I said like, yeah, my suicidal thoughts are not great right now, but like I can definitely get through the weekend. And it was a complete change. Suddenly they were like massively overwhelming. And I was like, I need to kill myself right now, like right this second. So I was frantically searching the car for something I could use, because I couldn't drive anywhere to get something. So I was just kind of like, what can I use? What can I do right now? And I ended up finding something. I'm not going to say what it was here, but I found something and I knew that I could 100% absolutely use this and it would kill me and I could do it. So I had this thing in my hand. I was panicking and I think that's just kind of when things got so just overwhelming. I had it. I had a way to do it. I've been depressed and suicidal for, most of my life. And I was like, this is it. I finally have a way out and I can do it. And that'll be that. And then I'll be done and I won't have to feel this way anymore. I don't really know what it was that changed in that moment because I was feeling really terrible and I was feeling very much like I was going to go through with it this time. But I somehow, in the middle of all of this, ended up getting my phone and calling my therapist. I was still in his parking lot, so he was still there. I called him. I knew he was in with another client, but I called him anyways, and he didn't answer the calls, but he did see the calls and text me back right away because he has like a thing set up where if you call him twice in a row, it means that you're having an emergency. So I had done that. I had called him twice in a row. And so the second he saw the 2 missed calls, he immediately texted me and he was like, I see that you called me. What's going on? And me being me, I didn't want to like tell him everything for some reason. So I just said, um, it's not really that big of a deal, but like I don't think I can keep myself safe anymore over the weekend. I know that I said that to you earlier, and I'm sorry. I wasn't lying to you earlier, but like now I don't feel like I can anymore, and I'm still in the parking lot. Um, so he was like, okay, I'm with a client. I will be done in 30 minutes. Can you come back in 30 minutes? And I said yes. So yeah, so during that 30 minutes, I had a lot of mixed feelings about what I had done because, on the one hand, I was glad that I called for help, um, and that I wasn't going to go through with this. I wasn't going to do it. I was going to go back in. I was going to get help. I knew I was going to go to the hospital at that point. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to get help. I'm going to be fine. Nothing's going to happen. But on the other hand, I was really angry at myself because I was like, why did I ask for help? I want it to be done. I wanted it to be this was my chance, and I blew it by asking for help. Um, the 30 minutes went by, and I went into my therapist's office. I told him a little bit about what happened. He called the hospital. He gave them kind of a heads up that I would be coming and kind of what the situation was. And he called my husband and asked my husband to come pick me up because I couldn't drive myself, obviously. And then I just kind of waited. And I'm not going to get into a lot of like what happened at the hospital, but I went to the hospital. I was in the crisis unit for I think 2 days because there was no beds open in any psych hospital in the entire state. So I was in the crisis unit for 2 days while they were waiting to place me, which was stressful. And I had, kind of mixed experiences there. I had a really good social worker that I talked to there, though, that he told me that I was, really, it sounded like I was really close to killing myself, and that I did a really great and a really brave thing by asking for help instead of doing that, and for getting to the hospital instead of being dead. And it was really nice to hear that. And so since then, I don't know, I think a lot of people get the idea that if you have an experience like this where you get so close to actually going through with a suicide plan, um, and then you don't go through with it, I think people have the idea that like you're gonna feel better afterwards, and you're not gonna want to do it anymore. That's not how it works for me, I guess. I mean, maybe for some people it does, but I have good days and bad days. Some days I am really thankful that I made that decision to call for help, and some days I'm really mad at myself for making the decision to call for help. It's kind of a toss up for how I'm going to feel about it. And I guess the one thing that I want to say and make sure I make clear is that asking for help is never the wrong thing to do, even if it feels like the wrong thing to do. So, like I said, immediately after I called for help, I was mad at myself and I felt like I did the wrong thing. I felt like I should have just killed myself, and that should have been it, and that should have been what I did. Um so asking for help doesn't always feel good. It doesn't just magically make things better, but it's never the wrong thing to do. It's never a weak thing to do. It's always a very courageous thing and a good thing to do. One of the things that my therapist said to me when I was feeling kind of guilty about getting that close to doing it and feeling, trying to navigate all the feelings of being mad that I called for help and all that stuff, is he told me that any decision that I make that keeps me alive longer is always the right decision, regardless of how I feel about it. And that was really helpful to me. So I guess if you can relate to any of this, if you're someone that, has feelings of wanting to kill yourself to any degree, anyone who's, struggling with depression and low mood, my biggest advice is to find a therapist that you connect with, that you feel comfortable with, and that you feel genuinely cares for you. Because I think that is what made the biggest difference in this moment for me was I knew that I could call my therapist and he would help me and he wasn't going to judge me. He wasn't going to be mad at me. Like none of that was going to happen. He was going to be caring and supportive and he was going to help me get to the hospital and get the care that I needed in that moment. So, if you're watching this and you relate to any of this, please, please, please reach out to somebody, even if it's a friend, if it's family, somebody at school, somebody at work. Just reach out and start the conversation. There are tons of great therapists out there too, and I always recommend that if you're struggling with any mental health issue, that finding a therapist is one of the most important things. There will also be a number in the description of my video to the suicide prevention hotline. That is also a hotline that you can call anytime and that they will help you and give you advice in these moments if you don't have anyone else that you can call. You can always take yourself to the emergency room in these situations. That's something I didn't know. Like, you can always bring yourself to the hospital, even though that's, I get that that can be a scary thing to do, but if it's what is needed to keep you safe, it is definitely worth it. But yeah, biggest advice that I just can't stress enough is to find a therapist and to find a mental health professional that cares for you and that is going to help you and that you can be honest with, because that is why I am still alive, because I have a therapist who I can be honest with and who I know can help me in these situations. So thank you guys so much for watching. I know this video was a little bit different than usual. If you have any questions about anything, please leave them in the comments. I'm always willing to talk more about this. This is only one little part of my story. And thank you guys so much for letting me share it with you. And I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks.